Hi class, welcome back. We're in chapter 8 and we're discussing brain development in adolescence. So let me ask you a question. What's your favorite movie where someone takes big risks? So I'm a child of the 70s and 80s. I liked the movie Speed when I was younger. That was a movie of very big risk. This is Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. In case you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's a great movie. I think I saw it on Netflix the other day, or maybe Prime for free. When I was sick and had COVID and had Omicron. So I love that movie because we've got a couple of young people who are taking massive risks, all right? So there's a bomb on the city bus, and if the city bus goes below, I think it's 50 miles an hour, it will explode. So Sandra Bullock is driving the bus, and Keanu Reeves is the cop who's trying to save the day. And they have to keep this bus going at 50 miles an hour. There's a gas leak. There's a video camera. I mean, all kinds of crazy town stuff happening. So why do people do that stuff? And why do we intuit that it's young people who are going to take those kinds of risks for the most part? So let's think about brain development in adolescence. And what I want to share with you is this idea of adaptive adolescence. There's been a history in the adolescence literature that is going away now, but that people used to think that adolescents were bad and rebellious and had horrible relationships with their parents. I think that was actually a cultural thing that developed early in the 1900s. I don't really see that particularly these days, and the literature doesn't support that either. So let's think about adolescence from a more updated point of view. And let me share with you the idea that adolescence is actually an adaptive period of time, not a period of time where the brain is just sort of malformed and childish and can't make good decisions and they're just too risky because they're just dumb. It's not that at all. So the brain is undergoing massive changes between ages 12 and 25. Okay, your brain is not fully cooked until you're about 25 years old. That's when brain development stops. And that's been true across time. Even when people were getting married at 16, 18, 20, 21, the brain's development was not different. It doesn't grow a whole lot. It was actually 90% of adult size at age 6. Remember, we're born with a brain about 25% of adult size, grows to about 80%, as I recall, by age 3, 90% of adult size by age 6. It's not the size. Instead, what it's doing is it's undergoing an extensive remodeling, resembling a wiring and network upgrade. Okay, an extensive remodeling resembling a wiring and network upgrade. So myelination increases transmission speed about 100 times. You know how it is to talk to a little kid and they're so slow in telling their little story, and by the time they're teenagers, they're speaking as quickly as adults are. That's because the brain myelinated. The dendrites are growing twiggier. So remember the neuron, there's an axon that sends messages. There's a bunch of dendrites that are like tree-like structures. And so they grow twiggier. They have more more structures for receiving information. The most heavily used synapses grow stronger. Seldom used synapses wither, causing the cortex to be thinner, but more efficient. Imagine if you took out all of the extraneous roads you don't need on your route from home to work. Just a straight shot, a lot faster, right? Same thing with the brain. These changes occur in a slow wave from back to front, from the more primitive parts of the brain to the more sophisticated parts over the course of years. So the survival stuff in the adolescent is advancing earlier than the complex planning, thinking, decision-making, emotion regulation that we do up here. The corpus callosum, that structure that's in the middle of the brain that connects the left and the right hemispheres, thickens, which increases connectivity, which allows the adolescent brain to use more of the brain together. You also get stronger connections between the hippocampus and the frontal lobe. The hippocampus, remember, is learning and memory, and the frontal lobe is decision-making, planning, emotion regulation, executive functioning. And so you can better connect what you've learned and experienced before and use that to make good decisions and regulate your behavior. So I included this David Dobbs Beautiful Brains article for you on Canvas as an optional thing. I would encourage you to read it, but I'm going to discuss it a little bit here. Dobbs says that when this development proceeds normally, this meaning brain development, we get better at balancing impulse, desire, goals, self-interest, rules, ethics, and even altruism, generating behavior that's more complex and sometimes at least more sensible. But at times, and especially at first, the brain does this work clumsily. It's hard to get all those new cogs to mesh. So this is Beatriz Luna. She's a neuroscientist who does neuroimaging studies of teenage brains. She scans the brains of children, teens, and adults while doing an anti-saccade test. This is sort of like a video game for the eyes. So you're looking at a screen and you see sudden flashes of light, and your job is to not look at the sudden flash of light. You're supposed to look away, anti the saccade. Okay, this is really, really hard for all people because when we see a sudden flash of light, our brain automatically wants to look at it. But it can be done, and so she gives people this test, and what she finds is that the children fail about half the time. But by 15 years, people can do as well as adults if they are motivated. If they are motivated. 15-year-old brains are functioning very differently from adults' brains during the task. So 15-year-olds can do what adults do, but they use different parts of the brain. It looks a lot more effortful, and they only do it if they're really motivated. They're going to get some kind of reward for this, okay? But adults will just do it much more automatically, and they'll do it whether they're rewarded or not. Okay, do you see this? So children can't do it very well. 15-year-olds can do it if motivated, but it's hard. It's clumsy. Okay. So adults are automatically using areas of the brain that monitor performance, spot errors, plan, and stay focused. Automatically do that. Teens don't use these areas of the brain as much. They just don't. But if they're given an extra reward, teens will use those areas of the brain to do the task. By age 20, people are using the brain much as adults do, probably because executive parts of the brain up here are becoming faster and more effective. So fascinating support for this idea that the brain is developing from back to front, that it takes some time for all these parts to kind of work together in a way that's automatic and efficient the way it is for adults. So Dobbs continues, along with lacking experience generally, they're still learning to use their brain's new networks. Stress, fatigue, or challenges can cause a misfire. Abigail Baird, a Vassar psychologist who studies teens, calls this neural gawkiness, an equivalent to the physical awkwardness teens sometimes display while mastering their growing bodies. If you've ever seen a kid who's in the middle of his height spurt, trying to do something, just even walk, let them do something physically challenging. They look like baby horses because the arms and legs, remember, we're growing from the extremities to the inside. The arms and legs are really big and long, and the hands are huge and the feet are huge, but the torso is still small, and their center of gravity is kind of off balance. Okay, the same thing is happening in the brain, that we've got these new networks, and if there's anything challenging, stress, fatigue, we can kind of misfire. We're kind of neurally gawky. So we might say, oh, teenagers are acting impulsively and they're having unprotected sex, they're sexting, they're taking pretty colored pills that someone passed around at a party that could be fentanyl. They're texting and driving, they're driving too fast. They're acting that way because their brains aren't done. You can see it right there in the scans. But David Dobbs says, I don't know about that. That's kind of an old story. He says the adaptive adolescent story casts the teen less as a rough draft than as an exquisitely sensitive, highly adaptable creature wired almost perfectly for the job of moving from the safety of home into the complicated world outside. You get that? It's not that kids are just neurally gawky and they just are undeveloped. It's actually, he says, that they're exquisitely sensitive, highly adaptable. They're wired perfectly for their job. What's their job at this point? To move from the safety of home into the complex world outside. So we know that sensation seeking and risk taking peak between ages 15 and 25. And we know that this can lead to dangerous behavior. This age dies of accidents more than any other age. 1 out of 3 teen deaths is from a car accident. Most of those involve alcohol. Is that being stupid and neurally gawky? Or is that taking something that's adaptive and running with it too far? So this kind of sensation seeking and risk taking can lead to really positive behavior, like forming new relationships, getting out of the house, trying new things in life, interviewing for a job, taking a new class, asking someone out on a date, making a friend, inventing something new. You know, I don't do that kind of stuff very much anymore while I interview for jobs. That riskiness that teenagers seem to be naturally wired for dissipates as you get older, because I'm not supposed to be building new things. I'm supposed to be building on what I already have. But an adolescent is supposed to, according to this view, take risks. They are wired for risk because that helps them. The adaptive adolescent story casts the teen less as a rough draft than as an exquisitely sensitive, highly adaptable creature, wired almost perfectly for the job of moving from the safety of home into the complicated world outside. So what if the teen brains aren't just stupid? That's the conventional explanation. And they aren't just puny, the work in progress explanation. What if the teen brain takes more risks because they value risk and reward differently than adults? And what if that's adaptive? So now we get to Larry Steinberg's neuroimaging studies of teenage brains. So Larry Steinberg is actually the conceptual father of Diana Baumrind, who is the conceptual mother of my advisor in grad school, Nina Mounts, and then there's me. There we go. So anyway, Larry Steinberg does a lot of really interesting work, though. He does a lot on parenting, but he's also done quite a bit on neuroimaging. So he has subjects, again, play a video game where they drive across town as quickly as possible. It's a driving game. And you encounter traffic lights, some green, some yellow, some red. And if you make it through a yellow, you will save time. And if you don't make it through a yellow before it turns red, you lose more time than you would have if you stopped. Okay, and your job is to get through as quickly as possible. So there is some incentive to blow through a yellow, but there's also a real risk, a real downside if you guess it wrong. So when teens drive the course alone in a room all by themselves, they will take the same number of risks that adults do. But when the teens' friends are in the room, oh, what do you think happens there? They take twice as many risks as adults do. This outcome shows that teens aren't risky because their brains can't do it. They could do it. It's that they value reward more, especially social reward. They value peer praise and admiration. Now, do you think an adult takes more risks when their friends are in the room? No, but teenagers do. Teenagers value social reward. So the willingness to take risks at this time of life is probably evolutionarily adaptive. The more you take risks, the better you do. You get the mate, you get the job, you get the resources. And responsiveness to social reward particularly gets you out of the house, so to speak, to take those risks that will move you forward in life. So here we have a chart that kind of shows this, what's happening in the brain, but it doesn't give the interpretation, this neural gawkiness or puniness or adaptivity. It doesn't tell us that. But it does tell us there's a difference between the limbic system and the frontal system. The limbic system, of course, is where we're doing emotion processing, fear, social reward. And then here's the frontal system where we regulate emotions, control our impulses. Notice that the limbic system, where we do emotions, is fully online by age 15, but the frontal is not. The frontal system is not done until age 25. There is a gap in the brain between those two. So we are more emotional, more risk-taking, more sensation-seeking, less aware of all the risks for about a 10-year span of time. We could say, this is just a brain that's not fully cooked and they're making bad decisions. Or we could say, this is a brain that is functioning how it should because it's supposed to take risks in order to get out of the house and do the things it needs to do. All right, I hope you enjoyed that discussion of brain development. I think that adaptive adolescence is a wonderful way to look at teenage brains.